All right, we have literally 4 rooms that we are able to add because the resort has some availability that we can play with. We sold out our room blocks, so please reach out to us via email. It'll be in our post here in the notes for you to just click on and reach out, and we'll get you reserved because...
Well, info@vitaledgewellnesscoaching.com is how you can contact us to find out more about Cianalani and the amazing eco resort that we'll be hosting a group with on September 11th through 15th. Come down and join us to rest, reset, and reconnect.
Rooted in resilience, inspired by nature, powered by movement. The podcasts where healing meets empowerment. Let's rise and thrive together. And now, here are your hosts, Scott and Melissa.
Welcome to Rise and Thrive podcasts from Vital Edge Wellness Coaching. I am Melissa, and this is Scott, and we're here to talk more about change. So before we do that, though, let's ground ourselves in this moment, ground into the moment.
Don't ground yourself.
To be present.
Mm-hmm.
So putting other things aside, even if you are doing a little multitasking here, we still can find that moment to breathe. So here we are.
Yeah, so today I'm going to read a little something from one of my very favorite books called The Mindfulness Code. I've read this several times over the years. It's The Keys for Overcoming Stress, Anxiety, Fear, and Happiness by Donald Altman. And this is a fantastic guide. And so let me just read a little bit of this to you today. So find yourself in a comfortable position. Keep your eyes open if you're operating any heavy equipment, including a vehicle. If you're not, put your feet flat on the floor and
crisscross.
Or crisscross. If you're sitting, I was going to get to that part. Sit comfortably on the floor, or sit with your feet flat on the floor if you're in a chair, and let the chair hold that weight. Straighten your back, but not stiff. Take a nice inhale. Follow it with a longer exhale. That's where the relaxation happens, on the exhale. Another time in through the nose, out through the mouth, letting the shoulders drop. One more cleansing inhale. Hold it at the top. On the exhale, let all your facial muscles relax. And I'll begin. Don't let your existing stories frustrate you. Although they are causing you pain, they are also your treasure, for they possess the seeds leading to emergence of the spaciousness of the true self. Find a safe place to sit in silence, perhaps nature. Identify one of your limiting stories. It could be a story of greed, of needing to win, of trying to control a situation. Sit with the story for several minutes and breathe deeply as you do this. Now, let yourself contemplate the deep need that lies behind this story, perhaps at its core. This story is about getting love, being needed, feeling safe, or avoiding the pain of shame or loss. Connect with the deeper need this story expresses. Look deeply into the truth of whatever emotions exist in your story or belief: jealousy, envy, lust, fear, hatred, shame, sadness, and anger. Don't push these away, but also don't grab onto them. Let them be and see them for what they are. Breathe into each emotion that is present, watching each with a gentle understanding. Let spaciousness and emptiness expand around each. As you do this, pay attention to the kernel of non-jealousy, non-envy, non-lust, non-fear, non-hatred, non-shame, or non-anger that lies dormant. Let it emerge naturally, without expectation. And as you do, just sit with this as it is, seeing it as it is, and being as it is. Take another nice long inhale. Exhale that out. Come back into your space. You can open your eyes, maybe move your shoulders and fingers. And we can begin continuing the conversation around navigating challenging change, part 2. We hope that the last episode provided you with some global views on navigating change, and maybe you came away from it understanding a little bit more about where you are with your own change and how you navigate change. Or maybe you were able to help a friend who was navigating change with some of the conversations we had. We're going to take it to another level this time. We want to kind of have a focus on that inner compass that we all have, that thing that I call it a thing. And I know other spiritual teachers have called it a thing because we don't know if it's male or female. We just know it is a thing that guides us. The Tao talks about it as a he, her. It doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter in this case. But we want to talk about how you use that knowingness in you, the guide to navigate challenging change, and how the faith, hope, and belief inform that knowing in guiding you to your highest and greatest good. You can interpret your knowing. I know I'm struggling with that word. To be a religious, or non-religious, really doesn't matter to us. I think that today is about you acknowledging that, as Michael Singer says, hello, you're in there.
Who is that talking?
Who is that talking, right? When you say to yourself, I wonder if I should, and you answer, who's answering? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't, if you saw, it seems crazy to think you talk to yourself, but there is a self in there you're talking to.
All the time.
Right? So then it becomes, what's the dialogue I'm having?
Yeah.
And who manages that? And who manages it, right? So Melissa told me an amazing story that she's going to share today. And it triggered me to remember a few stories of my own where that knowing came through loud and clear. Like I didn't have a choice and I needed it in that moment. And I think that when you're working on your practice, yoga, functional movement, moving that body, watching what you put in your body, your breathing, meditation,
nature,
immersion, your knowing is more readily accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talk about that a lot in my yoga classes and sessions with individuals, that when we come to practice on the mat, it's clearing the, as my teacher put it, the residue, the clutter, the buildup from our life experiences that often gets in the way of that inner knowing, that inner wisdom. And we've all had that experience. You just know, and you feel right about this next action step. And sometimes you don't even know if you feel right. You just feel so moved to like move forward and focus on that. It's like I kind of described it as that little seed was in a dark room and there was one little pin stream of light. That seed would find that light.
Grow toward it.
And that's what we do as humans often. And part of us talking about this and providing this and supporting and building this community is to be that light. Because many of us, when we're in the throes of challenges, and sometimes we can't see beyond that moment, and it's so overwhelming just trying to make ends meet or deal with this, a challenging environment or whatever relationship, that there seems like there's no way out. And that's part of the support that we're talking about today and the tools.
I'm reminded of Eckhart Tolle and his power of now, and now is all we ever have. And I know I have struggled in my past with not being in the now, mm-hmm. with being in the future, maybe wishing for something to be different in the future. Or I don't spend too much time in the past, but I know folks who do, where they're like, well, I've done that before and it's going to be like that again because I know I've been there and this has happened. And so that's a past kind of mentality. And I think the knowing is always in the present moment, right? I had a moment a few years ago. I'm a motorcycle rider and I'm a pretty conservative guy on a motorcycle. I don't like traffic and I tend to stay out on the country roads. And Grew up out in Almsville, and it was a weekday. I just had the day off, and I thought, I'm going to go for a ride. It was a beautiful day. And I had just the most beautiful day. I just rode out past my old high school, and it was really nostalgic. And I went to the A&W out in Staten, which is still there. And you know, my family used to ride our bicycles from our house 6-7 miles. We'd go get, you know, a root beer float, and we'd ride back. So I stopped there and had a root beer float, and I was just in this nostalgic, cool space. You know, I was just feeling really good, and I was heading home and going through these backcountry roads, and no cars on the road, no shoulders, just irrigation ditches. And all of a sudden, I can't even describe it to you the way it happened, because it happened so quickly, but somebody came reversing out of their driveway at a very high rate of speed. And I remember I was right there, and I remember everything slowing down, and I had a choice. Really didn't have a choice. I had to make a decision in a fraction of a split moment to ram the car or ram the bank of mailboxes and go into the irrigation ditch over the mailboxes. There was absolutely zero space for me. And I ride a KLR 650. It's about 600 pounds. It's not a light bike. It's not a super heavy bike either, but it's heavy. And I don't consider myself a religious person, but I got through. I don't know how I got through. I could clearly see the bumper on my motorcycle, like right there, and the mailbox is right there. I don't know how I got through. I did a little juke, you know. I'm pretty experienced motorcycle, so I had to miss potholes and I had to miss things when they're coming at me, but not a car in a mailbox. I don't know how I swerved through there. And I pulled over. Heart was beating out of my chest. And once I composed myself, I got super angry, and I was angry. I almost was killed. I mean, I couldn't believe I didn't even have a scratch. And so the car that had done it had pulled up past me and pulled over. And I got off my motorcycle and took off my helmet. I went up there to give them hell. And there was a teenage kid at the wheel, and he was white as a sheet, and he was shaking. His hands were just shaking. And I went up there ready to just rip into him, and I saw what was going on. I just knew in that moment he was never going to make that mistake again. But I said, how in the world do you back out of a driveway at 20 miles an hour without looking both ways? You know, you almost killed me. Would you have liked to explain to my mother and my grandkids that because of your recklessness, I'm no longer on this planet? Please be more careful and watch out for motorcycles. And he said, okay. And I got my motorcycle and I rode home at like 20 miles an hour. Oh my gosh. Oh. And the message of the story, and this resonates with me because it comes up frequently in my consciousness, is that there was a knowing something happened. It was not a physical response to that situation. And I can see in my mind's eye that, well, first of all, it wasn't my time. I'm a firm believer. If it was my time, it would have happened. Secondly, I can see in the back of my mind, even as I'm reliving this, these winged beings pushing me through. Just, nope, you're good. And I don't know how I got through, because it was literally less than a foot when I was at that car in the mailbox. And it comes up because it is a power we don't harness in our concerns and worries that are day to day. It is a power that knows the direction. I say compass for a reason. I'm a big compass guy. We have a true north. And that moment kept me on my true north, whatever my life purpose is. My work wasn't done. And I realize that sounds deep and super philosophical, and it's my story and I stick to it. It's to illustrate to you that we have this power in us that will kick in an emergency situation to carry us through. Mm-hmm. But we can also harness it consciously to carry us through. And the way you access it is through the practice we talked about a few minutes ago. And I know you've had your own moments of knowing, and I'd encourage all of you to continue to know that the practice will allow that to come out and support you. And that's one of two of my near-death experiences. So,
Yeah. I don't know how to talk after that.
well, and as I described in the last episode about my client with her breathing in the moment in our coaching session, my world was greener. My world was more joyful. For a long period of time, I felt alive and grateful. We don't talk about gratefulness as part of our tools often enough, but I was so grateful. And then I began to wonder about the intertwining of our consciousness as humans on this planet, and how that young man and I had a moment, and how has this affected him moving forward?
Yeah.
And in a good way. I'm assuming that he took the lesson that was meant to be for him in that moment too. And of course, we're talking about navigating change, and this isn't meant to be the near-death experience philosophical conversation that it is in this moment, except that you navigate challenging change by listening to that knowing, and you can harness that by being quiet.
Well, we often hear about it from those near-death experiences or something traumatic or big, right?
Yes.
And what we're applying, we want to help us to bring forth today is that it's always there. That inner knowing is there for you to tap into. And these mindfulness practices, and like I said in my yoga classes, come into the mat, creating time and space for you just to be, to get out in nature, have your morning coffee on the back porch and just breathe and watch the trees. That quiet time is not just for you to endure your day, build up some energy to endure the day. It's literally to tap into that inner knowing. So the more these practices become part of you, I describe it as being able to live from that space of knowing more.
I crave it.
Well, just like you said, after that, the gratitude was higher. The clarity was the thankfulness, the being alive, breathing, right? We don't have to wait till something massive happens like that to live from that place of joy. And so
pain facilitates change.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to get that painful.
Well, and just like I shared in the last episode, I remember a dear being telling me, you will know when you know. No one else can tell you. And that is when I think the inner knowing, that little stream of light coming into your dark room, and you'll know when to look towards it.
And you get there by being present in this moment, even in the worry, anger, whatever emotions you're in. Is, I know I say this all the time too, is feelings buried alive never die. They just
come out in pain.
Yeah,
in the pain body.
They just fester. Thank you. They sit in there and they fester and fester. So feel the feelings and realize this will change in a moment, and because everything changes.
Well, and that's why giving that he's talking about like a quiet moment, right? We want to encourage that. That's why we dedicate ourselves at the beginning of the episodes, even if you're like, okay, I'm busy driving, but that quiet moment is whispering in your ear that it can exist anytime, anywhere, to reconnect you to your inner knowing, your compass. I have difficulty using those, but north.
Yeah, well, you're directionally challenged, so that makes sense.
Yes. But that's what we're tapping into. It's not us telling you go do this and it's for you to tap into your inner wisdom. And like I said, the more you practice these, it's like you're able to see that, to feel that, and to navigate and see what you might be tolerating that needs to change. Or I used an analogy about a boat and a fisherman this week in classes, and one of the pieces I added as the week continued is, when you're reeling those lines in, you might realize some lines that need to be cut, and that's okay. And that's what these practices that we talk about and getting quiet to hear with that inner voice and get to know it.
The flip side is you may get your line cut.
Mm-hmm.
You may be faced with cutting your line with someone else, but someone else may cut their line with you. And that is also a challenging change that your knowing will carry you through if you're working your practice. I think that it's funny to sit here and talk about these things and realize that it's been 35 years I've been doing these practices. It's strange because time is such an elusive thing, and it feels like I'm just beginning these practices. And yet I go back in my mind as we're talking about this, and it's like, wow, I was in a tough spot when I was seeking relief, and these practices started to grow. You may just be starting out. You may be just now be facing. You may never have sat on a yoga mat. You may have never hugged a tree. You may never have sat in silence or taken a 7-day silent retreat like Melissa's done that she craves.
The one. Yes.
And yet I didn't know either, but there is magic in beginning. And so you just begin. Sit for 5 minutes and breathe. Take your shoes off. Sit on the earth. Begin. And pretty soon, 35 years will go by and you'll be growing into your practice, not trying to create a practice.
Right. Well, and I like to point out too, you alluded to that time is an illusion, and it is. And it's not, healing is not linear.
Yeah, I know.
And just
That's
because
hard.
I've been practicing so many years, I should be like,
no.
This is a journey. These practices are helping us to navigate the human realm.
Yeah.
And because we all have that inner voice, just like you talked about Michael Singer's, we have that voice, and it isn't until probably a good handful of years that we've actually started talking about that voice, to really understand that, how are we doing in there?
We've mentioned we have some exciting things to announce in a few weeks, and we're going to talk more about this in those exciting things. But I think faith, hope, and belief, which I think are all different, they're sometimes overlapping, is a misunderstood tool. Not just, we're talking about navigating challenging change, but really we're talking about up-leveling. I want to have the happiest existence with the most joy, doing the most good in the world I can have in this lifetime, because we only get one shot. And so when I look at faith, hope, and belief, and I tie it to my knowing, it's always toward that North Star of wanting to live my highest and greatest good and give back and live in joy. And that means that challenging change comes and I can look and see if it aligns or not.
At the same time, Scott and I've had enough conversations together to understand that he's not saying that his life is going to be cake and fluffy and everything's just going to be peaceful and vibing. What he's talking about is that even amongst the next wave that comes, because the waves will continue, because this is part of what life we've come to know is it's the waves, he'll be able to have joy within that moment, even when it's tough stuff. So we can know that we can ride that wave. I think it was John Kabat-Zinn, maybe the learning to surf, and, can't control the ocean, but I can learn how to surf. And so we're surfing the waves. And so he's talking about not just being in this constant state of bliss. At the same time, we can tap into that inner knowing, which is untouched by the human condition. In the yoga, if you know a little bit of yoga terminology, if you tell you about the koshas, that indwelling wholeness, that ananda, in the yoga terms is defined as bliss, but it's not like blissed out. It is just whole and complete. That's untouched by the human. And so we have the access within us. We've all felt that, where we just feel that inner joy, that inner peace, those little glimpses. It's often the stuff that gets in the way that we see through now because we've had this experience or that experience.
We mistake that for the experience.
Right. And so it's like these tools help us to clear that, to be able to come more into that seat more often. And that's why we want to encourage each of you and encourage you to think about some of your daily practices and things that, like one of our guests not too long ago has been such a dedicated individual to these practices. and just did it because they knew there was something to them, but didn't really know, just was very type A and was able to be like, I'm going to stick to this, and did. And with that commitment that he's made, because that's part of his kind of way of being, there was that inner knowing that now the quote unquote fruits of his labor is starting to show up, and he's more and more aware of it. And it's not meaning that you have to practice for 35 years and then you can have the results. No, you'll have the results along the way.
Absolutely.
You become more clear in recognizing it was the law. That's the kicker.
Yeah.
Is when we're navigating this change, the joy and the peace amongst the change is always there. We just have to tap into it.
Consistently is very helpful. I don't know what. It's hard to imagine myself not tapping into those practices 35 years ago and who I'd be today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not immune to hurt or struggle and stress. Not immune to it. I don't know anyone who is, honestly. And because I have my fair share. I just met one of my spiritual advisors yesterday, and she said, I don't know anyone managing the stress that you're managing right now in your life. It's crazy. When your spiritual advisor tells you that, you're like, holy hell, how much stress do I have? But
my boat. I don't know.
I just am proud that it is hard sometimes. I'm not denying it. I'm just proud that I know I've got some tools. And our hope, Vital Edge Wellness Coaching, was born from that. That we talk, Melissa and I were having coffee and having meetings. She was helping me with my fitness and nutrition. I was helping her with her business plan and doing other things. And we all of a sudden realized that people need to know what these things are we're talking about. The whole reason we're sitting with you today is because this is how strongly we know the knowing, and we want you to know the knowing. But we're not just, again, this is about navigating challenging change. Let's wrap this up today. We'll come back with a part 3. And I want to make sure that we leave you with a summary of today. Tap into your knowing. How do you do that? Here's some suggestions. Mindfulness practice. Go sit outside right away, as soon as you can. Put your feet on the ground and just listen. Yeah, let the sunlight hit your face. In case you didn't hear that, she's a quiet talker when she gets mindful. And just be. Just show up. That's one of the things I got to say is, especially if you've not been or haven't done, for example, yoga or a mindfulness practice, just know it's not some woo-woo type thing. It's you connecting with you. And I'm going to just encourage each of you to just show up. Keep showing up to listen to us. Show up to do some of these things that sound resonating. Say, oh, we'll give that a go. Maybe you're already doing them, and now you can bring a deeper awareness to be like, yeah, I can feel a deeper knowing from this. And that commitment alone starts to tap you in. It isn't some magical thing that you have to have so many years under your belt, or you have to, do X, Y, and Z and, hold your pinky a certain way. No, just showing up for yourself and getting quiet. That is the foundational piece. And joining us when you can for these mindfulness practices and exposing yourself to more, then you'll make it your own, and more of your little rituals and patterns will come into place where you're holding that space for your body to tap into that inner knowing that's in you already, waiting for you to tap in. That is unique to you and no one else. Yeah. I like to say it's untouched by human hands. It's your space, your sacred space to drop into, waiting for you. And that will give you the ability to navigate any challenging change you find yourself in. I promise. So thank you for today. We will see you for episode 3 of this very meaty topic, navigating challenging change. And please share and like this podcast and leave us a review, leave us a rating, please. We never remember to ask for that, but it'd be great if you could. Positive words. We're like, oh yeah, we got to. Yeah, we got to remember to ask for that. So you leave us a rating and give us some feedback on what your thoughts are. And as I always say, take care of each other, but don't forget to take care of yourself. We'll see you next time. Namaste.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Rise and Thrive. If you're ready for a deeper reset, join us for our upcoming wellness retreat in Mexico, September 11th to 15th. It's the perfect opportunity to recharge through movement, mindfulness, and connection. Visit VitalEdgeWellnessCoaching.com to learn more. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little more rise and thrive in their life. Follow us on your favorite platform to stay inspired. And until next time, keep rising and keep thriving.